In 2018, a Lethwei fighter named Tun Tun Min stepped into a match against a Thai Muay Thai champion. No gloves, no protective headgear, headbutts permitted. The bout was sanctioned. The crowd was in the thousands. The Thai fighter was a decorated champion with full professional equipment, trained for the sport's most grueling competition format. He was stopped inside 2 rounds. Not because he was outclassed in skill, because Lethwei operates in a dimension that no other sanctioned combat sport on Earth has permitted for over a century, a dimension where the human skull is a weapon, where a fight does not end when a man falls, it ends when a man does not get back up. Welcome to Martial Road, where warriors live forever. Lethwei is Myanmar's national combat sport. It has been practiced continuously for over 1,000 years. It has a documented death toll. It has produced some of the most physically devastating fighters on Earth, and it has never changed its rules. Not for safety committees, not for broadcast partners, not for the international combat sports community that has repeatedly asked it to. Today we are covering the full history of Lethwei, where it came from, what makes it mechanically unlike any other combat sport, the documented deaths and injuries that define its tradition, and why, despite everything, it continues to produce practitioners who choose it freely and train for it completely. To understand Lethwei, you need to understand the civilization that produced it. The Pagan Empire, the first unified Burmese state, which rose to dominance on the Irrawaddy Plain in the 9th century, left behind stone carvings and temple reliefs that document combat practices consistent with modern Lethwei. The fighting postures, the use of the head as an offensive weapon, the barefoot ground engagement, all of it appears in stone, nearly 12 centuries ago. What the ancient carvings show is not sport, it is military training documentation. The men depicted in those carvings were not athletes. They were soldiers. Lethwei in this period was not governed by rules. There was no ring, no timekeeper, no referee. Matches ended when one fighter could not continue. The headbutt was never restricted in Lethwei, because in the combat tradition that produced it, restricting the headbutt would have been like restricting the elbow. It was a limb. You used it. What is remarkable about Lethwei's history is not that it was brutal. What is remarkable is that it was honest. It never pretended to be something other than what it was. When British forces arrived in Burma in the early 19th century, they encountered Lethwei as a widespread and deeply embedded practice. The colonial administration made repeated attempts to restrict competitions. The injury rates were unmanageable, and public deaths created order problems. The restrictions failed. Lethwei continued openly, absorbed the limited regulatory frameworks Britain eventually imposed, and remained unchanged in substance. What exactly is Lethwei? Lethwei is a striking system that uses all 8 limbs, the fists, elbows, knees, and feet of Muay Thai, plus the head. That 9th weapon is not incidental. It is central. The headbutt in Lethwei is not used the way most combat sports practitioners imagine. It is not a desperation move. It is not a tactic of last resort. It is a primary offensive tool, drilled systematically, deployed with precision, and capable of ending a fight faster and more decisively than any glove strike at close range. Lethwei and combat sambo, under current FYS rules, stand as the only 2 active sanctioned combat sports on Earth where the headbutt remains a legal weapon. Every other major combat sport banned it in the modern era precisely because of its injury potential. These 2 systems kept it because their design philosophy demanded it. The entry angle is typically from the clinch. A Lethwei fighter who has established grip on an opponent's neck or shoulders is in immediate headbutt range. The strike targets the orbital ridge above the eye, the nose, or the bridge, zones where the skin over bone splits quickly even under moderate force, because bare skin on bone generates cuts that gloves suppress. This is the key mechanical reality of bare-knuckle combat that most audiences do not understand. Gloves are primarily a protective measure for the fighter throwing the punch, not the fighter receiving it. In Lethwei, a fighter knockdown gets 2 minutes to recover and continue. The only stoppages that end a match definitively are the corner throwing in the towel, a technical knockout called by the referee, or the fighter failing to rise within the 2-minute window. This recovery rule is not a quirk. It is the philosophical center of the system. A fighter who cannot be knocked down and kept down has not been defeated. This is the part of Lethwei's history that its practitioners do not deny, and its advocates do not minimize. Lethwei has killed fighters. The documented record includes deaths at competitions across Myanmar's history, predominantly from head trauma, traumatic brain injury, subdural hematoma, and acute cerebral hemorrhage in fighters who continued after being knocked down, under the 2-minute recovery rule. The specific danger, from a neurological standpoint, is second impact syndrome. A fighter who sustains a knockout, which represents a significant concussive event, and then continues to absorb strikes is at acute risk of a second impact, before the brain has recovered from the first. Second impact syndrome is not reliably survivable. The brain swells catastrophically. The window between the second impact and death can be minutes. Traditional Lethwei does not have ringside neurology. Traditional Lethwei competitions in rural Myanmar do not have ambulances standing by. The 2-minute recovery rule was designed by people who understood fighting. It was not designed by people who understood what a knockout does to the brain at the cellular level, because that knowledge did not exist when the rule was established, and the tradition predates the science by centuries. The deaths are not anomalies. They are the documented consequence of a system that was built to find the absolute limit of human combat endurance, and that occasionally finds that limit in the worst possible way. Organizations, including the World Boxing Council, have repeatedly urged Lethwei's governing bodies to introduce mandatory gloves, restrict headbutts, and modify the recovery rule. The Lethwei community's position, stated consistently by practitioners, trainers, and officials, is this: the rules are the system. Removing the headbutt from Lethwei is not reforming Lethwei. It is creating a different sport and calling it by Lethwei's name. They are not wrong. What Lethwei's defenders also note, and what Western combat sports critics rarely acknowledge, is that the death rate in Lethwei's sanctioned professional competitions is not dramatically higher than the death rate in professional boxing, which kills approximately 10 fighters per year globally. The difference is in visibility, not frequency. The critique of Lethwei's danger is not wrong, but it is inconsistently applied. The people most loudly demanding that Lethwei change its rules tend to have little difficulty watching professional boxing. Today, Lethwei is practiced across Myanmar and in diaspora communities in Thailand, Malaysia, Japan, and increasingly in Europe and North America. The World Lethwei Championship has brought the system to international broadcast audiences for the first time, featuring fighters who train specifically for Lethwei's rules. The production values are high. The headbutts are still legal. The recovery rule still applies. And the injuries are still real. Lethwei is not chosen. Despite its danger, it is chosen in part because of it. The prestige of a Lethwei practitioner comes directly from what they are willing to endure and what they are capable of imposing. The bare-knuckle headbutt format is not an obstacle to the sport's value proposition. It is the value proposition. When we ask why Lethwei fighters continue in the face of documented deaths and proven neurological risk, we are asking a question that applies equally to every combat sport that allows head strikes. Lethwei is simply the version that has not yet been normalized enough for the question to feel rhetorical. Lethwei is the oldest continuously practiced combat sport that has never been modified for audience comfort. It has paid for that integrity with lives. Whether that trait is acceptable is a question that every person who engages with combat sports at any level is implicitly answering, usually for the sports they have decided to normalize, and against the sports they have decided to find disturbing. Lethwei's practitioners made their answer explicit 12 centuries ago. On the walls of Pagan's temples, the system they carved into stone is still running, it still works, and it still kills occasionally the people who love it most. Most combat sports exist on a spectrum between what a system actually is and what its administrators are willing to show. Boxing is what happens when you take a fight and add gloves, rounds, and a referee who can stop it. Muay Thai is what happens when you add a point system to a striking tradition that predates the point system. MMA is what happens when you build a cage, add referees, and tell two people they can do almost anything, but not quite everything. Lethwei is what happens when you don't negotiate. 12 centuries of practice, a death toll that its own community acknowledges, a recovery rule that neuroscience cannot endorse, a headbutt that only Lethwei and combat sambo still permit in sanctioned competition, and a community of practitioners in Myanmar who have been asked repeatedly by international bodies with more money and more influence than they will ever have to change. Their answer has been the same for 1,200 years. No. Stay strong. Stay informed. Subscribe to Marshall Road.